Good evening. My name is Bob Liff, and this is the CUNY Forum, bringing together prominent New Yorkers with faculty and students of the Edward T. Rogowsky Internship Program in Government and Public Affairs. When I entered Brooklyn College about 4 or 5 years ago in 1966, we paid no tuition. Our student fees were $30 a semester, and when they raised it to $50, we shut the college down. Of course, we were shutting colleges down a lot in those days. But by the late 1970s, in the depth of the city's fiscal crisis, the unthinkable came to CUNY in the form of tuition. Today, that tuition comes to about $3,200 a year for in-state students, which is a bargain by most standards, even with the recently reported rise in tuition at all public universities across the country, though the tuition for 2 years colleges is higher than the national average. But we are facing a mammoth fiscal crisis again, by some estimates worse than the one that the city faced a quarter century ago. For CUNY, the implications go beyond tuition to the programmatic strengths and advances in the sciences and technology that could themselves be threatened. We are joined by 4 prominent New Yorkers to discuss the state and fate of the nation's largest municipal public university system. Assemblyman Ed Sullivan, who is my assemblyman on the Upper West Side, is retiring after 26 years in Albany, where he served as chairman of the Higher Education Committee. Alan Dobrin is CUNY's senior vice chancellor and chief operating officer for the CUNY system. Marilyn Cattell is professor of political science at the CUNY Graduate Center and director of the Howard Samuel Center on State Management. And Patricia Fraticelli has perhaps the most direct and personal interest in our discussion. She is a student at Lehman College and the interim head of the CUNY Student Senate, and about to take her degree into that big cold world located just off campus. Let me start with you, Assemblyman Sullivan. You came into government at a time of fiscal collapse, and you're leaving at a time of fiscal collapse. Yes. I assume that means that they were unhappy to see you arrive and they're unhappy to see you go, which I guess is a plus. CUNY has traditionally not had the most defenders within the chambers of government. How will CUNY stand up against the kind of fiscal barracudas?
Well,
right now?
CUNY has to offer in response to people who denigrate it, and there are still some people, although they're becoming fewer and fewer because the quality of CUNY shines through the criticism. CUNY has to defend itself with the quality of its work, which is extraordinary. Most people don't realize that of the Fortune 500 CEOs, the top CEOs of the Fortune 500, CUNY has more in there than any other college in the country, and by a considerable amount. More than Yale, more than Wisconsin, strangely enough, which is third or second, and CUNY beats them out. So CUNY is an excellent school. I could go on the whole hour about how good it is, but I think it is the quality of the work done at CUNY that is the response to the people who would denigrate it.
Mr. Dobrin, you have to keep an eye on the books and how the whole place operates. And a couple of years ago, you had the report chaired by Benno Schmidt, which caused a huge uproar in the imposition of standards and the arguments that there was going to be a return to kind of racial tracking to a degree within the CUNY system. That doesn't seem to have happened based on the statistics I've seen. What's been the impact in CUNY in the last couple of years?
One of the things I've had the privilege to do at different points in my career is I've got to watch the numbers for 3 different mayors, and as a deputy director of operations for all of them. And when I thought about the numbers when I came to CUNY, I said, what's the most important number? Like, when you think about the Board of Ed, it's reading scores. When I thought about CUNY, I said, what's the thing that will give us an indication about how people feel about CUNY? And at the end of the day, I thought it's whether students want to come or not. That's really the indicator. People, take a look at CUNY, they make a decision, is this something for the amount of money that makes sense for them? And I want to just for a second, maybe more than a second, talk a little bit about the numbers for this year. It very much follows up on Assemblyman Sullivan's comments. And just, because I have the opportunity with the red light on, I have a real obligation to say that a lot of the good things that happened in this university were a result of Assemblyman Sullivan. He really, during his whole time in office, was the best friend we had in the legislature. And everybody at CUNY appreciates that, and it will never be forgotten.
Thank you.
But with that said, let me talk about the results of some of that good work. Enrollment this year is up 5.4% from last year. Now, that doesn't sound like all that much, but just to give it perspective, that's the largest increase in a quarter of a century. It comes out to over 10,000 students more at the university than were there last year as a result of more incoming freshmen and people staying more. And to give it some more perspective, we've increased the size of CUNY this year. That's more than twice the size of Dartmouth. And Dartmouth is a college of 5,000 change. We've added over 10,000 to CUNY in 1 year. Within that, new freshmen are up 5.6% at the senior colleges. They're up 5.9% at the community college. And transfer students, where people are saying, I want to be part of CUNY where I am, rather than where I am, is up 7.9%, which is the largest increase we've had in 30 years. In terms of graduate students, we have the largest number of graduate students we've ever had in the university's history. In terms of quality, if you look across the United, and this goes right to the heart of, who are the CUNY students and are they, competitive with other students? The average SAT score in four-year colleges, of entering freshmen in four-year colleges across the nation, is 1020. At CUNY this year, it's 1095. And then if you take a look at the ethnic breakdown, because some of the concerns were, as we begin to build in more quality, as it becomes 1095 rather than 1020, first people thought that students would stop coming, and that clearly isn't the case. Students are coming in record numbers and across the whole university. I mean, just as an aside, one of the things that I was shocked about is after we had the terrible tragedy of September 11th, I was negotiating with FEMA. And I said to FEMA, one of the things we're going to need is we're going to need help with reimbursement for Borough Manhattan Community College. That there's no question that we're going to lose enrollment there. That had to happen, and it didn't happen. There are 18,000 students, 10% more than they were last year. Freshmen across the board, 30, 40% up in every college. And the racial and ethnic breakdown of those students looks pretty much exactly what it looked like before we started the program. Black students last year were 21.7, now they're 21.2. Hispanic students were 23.3, now it's 23.0. White students at 34.7 versus 35.3. Asian students at 23.3, now they're down to 23.0. But that's virtually unchanged. And all of you study statistics, you know that any time you take a snapshot, you have these small, variances. So I think that's the greatest statistic to measure the health of the system. And I think, through the work, and I've only been here a year, you were here much longer, it's much more to your credit. But through the work that everyone's done, faculty and staff and our students, the university has not been in this good a shape in years. And as a Queens College graduate and Graduate Center almost graduate, you'll all learn about something. You'll all learn the term ABD, many of you, before you finish.
ABD also, by the way.
There are many of us, we don't have a club and we don't have our own athletic facilities, but there are
Well, you
many of
should
us.
tell them what ABD is.
It's all but dissertation.
All but dissertation.
In other words, you finished all the courses, but you didn't write your dissertation, so you don't get the degree.
Professor Cattell, it's a strange time for public higher education in a budget crunch. And, it's very telling that if the tuition here is $3,200 a year, the average four-year public university is, I think, just almost $4,100. So we're a little bit low. But the average tuition in a private school is over $18,000 a year. You've looked at public and private, education. Give me some assessment of where we are.
Well, I know I'm supposed to answer your question,
You
but
can
I have
answer-
to comment on some of the earlier
Nobody ever pays
comments,
attention.
right?
Please, go ahead.
And I'm sure that's why I was invited, so I could raise some other points of view. Just on your comments, obviously, when the economy is bad, we know historically more students go to college because they can't get jobs, especially in the changes that have been taking place in the American economy, where you can't get a job without a college degree anyway. And you probably wouldn't earn very much if you only had a high school degree. Secondly, I think to measure a university by the students coming in and their SAT scores is a little distorted. The function of higher education is to provide, especially a public institution, is to provide access. It's our job to help develop human capital. That's the one thing we can contribute to society as a university. So it's not the score coming in. It's the score going out. Otherwise, we're not doing our job. When there's a failure, the failure is not the student's failure. The failure is the faculty's failure or the school's failure. And for CUNY to be taking credit and thinking this is a great thing, that we now have 1,065 SAT entrants. We know all the faults of the SAT exam, by gender, by race. The exams are not the telling point. The thing is what happens to number one, providing the access for a wide range of students. Number two, what happens to the student during the course of their time in the university, and what happens to them after they get out of the university as a result of that experience. That's what's really important about what goes on here. On your figures about racial distribution, any statistician would also tell you have to disaggregate that data by college. You may have an overall same population distribution, but we don't have a diversity mix in the four-year senior elite colleges that you're describing. We don't provide the kind of access to a wide segment of the population of New York City. We know that there are problems about high school graduates. I think it's really important that we get back to thinking about CUNY as an important asset and institution in the city to do a particular kind of job, which is to provide the access to students who have no place else to go because they can't afford it, or they can't move out of the city, or they have families that they have to take care of. In the studies that we've done at the Howard Samuel Center, we know the reason students drop out of CUNY is because they have financial problems, number one. It's not that they can't make it, but they have financial problems. Or they have families, they have obligations with those families, and they have to stretch out their education. By the way, another statistic you might want to know, we had 28,000 students on welfare in 1988, 1989. We now have 4,000. What happened to those students? Was it a change in our standards, or was it also a combination of change in our standards as well as a change in the welfare legislation that didn't permit students to go to university? Some states said, we'll count attendance at college as work. The legislature passed a bill saying that here. You know what happened in the city? Mayor Giuliani said, we're not counting it as work. So the state did the thing. So I don't know. I know I didn't answer your question. But I think we ought to open up some of these other issues to discussion because I think they're quite important.
I have spent many years as a reporter, and my philosophy was always when two people want to yell at each other, I will hold their coats. I'm into the conflict. So
Okay, if you wouldn't mind holding my coat for 1 second.
let me just let me ask Patricia Fraticelli a question, because you seem to be the one who's most directly affected by this debate that's going on here and obviously obviously outside this hall. Do you fear the city's commitment to CUNY, which is a traditional commitment going back to 1837, starting with City College, and do you fear that because of the fiscal problems that you're going to have to pay more money, you're going to have to suffer? I mean, what kinds of concerns do you have when you hear this kind of debate?
Yeah, tuition hike, basically. Bottom line is tuition hike, but also I believe in organized. Also I believe in activists. Also I believe that if we work together and if you are active in your campus as a student, or if you are involved in student government or with NIPER, work together with the PSC, changes can happen. You know why? Because history has shown me that we have made changes, like students throughout history. And, you know, we are over 200,000 students at CUNY. And I know that all of us, we might not be able to vote. But if, for example, 100,000 students can make you a winner or a loser. And we elect the officials to represent us. And even though, yes, that's one of my biggest fears, the tuition hike, but I also believe that together we can make the difference. And if we organize and go to Albany, not only one time, but we are persistent, and we believe that we let the elected officials know that you are there to represent us. Don't forget about us. You know, we elect you, so we are watching you. We have to make sure that we have to go and lobby in the city council, in Albany, in the state assembly, everywhere, so things can happen. I mean, I'm not, even though I'm scared, yeah, but I believe in changes as well.
You want to jump into this debate?
Yeah, I do want to jump in because I have I think my colleague is right that SAT scores are not a good way of judging whether a college is good, because the college decides those themselves. The college says you can come in or you can't come in, and then if they want to skew that upward, they can do that. But I think the important thing is, as was said, what does the college do with the student? And the best judge of that, one of the judges, not the only judge, but one of the judges of that is graduate school. A lot of people go on to graduate school. Kids who go to, I say kids because for me, everybody's a kid now. I'm 69 years old. You're all kids. Even Ken Sherrill sitting in the back is a kid. But kids who go on to graduate school, that's the measure of a college. Are these young people accepted into graduate schools? Not just the graduate school of CUNY, although it's a very fine graduate school, but also some of the finer graduate schools around the country, Samford and Yale and Princeton and what have you. And there, CUNY matches up, has always matched up very, very well with any other undergraduate school. So it indicates that they're doing a good job at the undergraduate level because their young people are going on to some of the finest schools around, in addition to getting very, very good jobs. So I think that a better measure than the SATs, and I understand you're justly proud that the SATs
it's one of many measures.
But the SAT is a flawed measure. It's a rubber ruler. You know, when you have a rubber ruler, you can sort of stretch the ruler to fit anything you want it to fit. But it's not a really accurate one. But I think the graduate school measurement is a better one because they don't fool around, the graduate schools. They don't care about the controversy over CUNY at the Princeton graduate schools. They really don't care about it. They want the young people that can do the work, and they find them at CUNY.
Right. And just to refresh everybody's memory, because I think it may have got lost a little. First of all, one of the things you should know, and I've lived my whole life in New York, and I love being a New Yorker. I never plan to leave. But one of the things you have to remember about New York is they have a very tough time accepting good news. You know, part of us is we're kind of like, no matter what it is, no matter how good the news is, it must not be that good. There's a lot of good news in what I said. It wasn't only that more people are coming in, it was more people are transferring and more people are staying. And it's not only because the economy is not well now, because if you take a look at other colleges, including public colleges, they're not seeing increases in enrollment like we're seeing. And in terms of access, there hasn't been a tuition increase in 7 years so far.
Yeah.
Thank God.
Keep
But,
counting.
You know, so there's a lot, and it's more graduate students, as you're saying. And the SAT, we're not just saying it's good because the SAT scores up. It's good because all of this is in the right direction. More kids are coming. More kids are going to graduate school. More kids are staying. And, SAT scores up. It's just one of many, many indicators. But all of it together and the kind of, public attention that's being paid to CUNY in a very positive way. You couldn't see anything but bad articles about CUNY 3-4 years ago. Now we're seeing great articles about CUNY.
We have a different mayor.
Oh, that's a help. That's part of it.
That was
Don't be
Right.
bashful.
move in the right
All
direction.
right.
Jump in.
Know
be
that
bashful.
I'm saying it's an opportunity for us all to stay proud. There's much, much more that needs to be done, but we shouldn't see it as nothing happening because a lot of good things happen.
even though we have to meet the standards of other, the competition is hard out there, but many students felt that the technology fee was like indirect tuition hike. I know that we have to meet the standards out there. Everything is about technology, but $75, even though I don't care if it comes from your Pell check, if the state or city or whatever, Pell and TAP, anyway, it's your money because, put it this way, if you are paying taxes, nobody's paying your education but yourself. The money's coming out of your own taxes to pay your own education. So many students felt, including myself, that was like a tuition hike, the $75 increase. However, with all this enrollment and it's been great, whatever, what about the tuition? Can it be decreased a little bit? Because
Well, I don't mean to dominate, but the glass of
I'll
water.
dominate,
The,
don't
fa-
worry.
the, fa- the, the, the
But I was
famous
gonna-
glass of water, is the glass half empty or half full? I like the person who says the glass is half empty because it means there's work to be done to fill that glass, and that's the way I'm looking at it. And the tuition hike, there will probably be a suggestion next year in 2003 about a tuition hike. Now I'm going to make you a little arithmetic bet here. There are 8 million taxpayers, income taxpayers in New York State. If you take that tuition hike that's suggested, and I don't know what it's going to be because I'm not going to suggest it, I'm going to fight against it. But whatever it is,
we have to fight.
take that amount, multiply it by 8 million, and say, why not let everybody pay additional money? You know what will happen? You'll be able not only to pay for all CUNY's and SUNY's problems, you'll be able to pay most of the deficit down with such a tax increase if you spread it out over all the people. Now, the rule is, of course, never increase taxes. Well, let's make another rule. Never increase tuition. How about that one? Because tuition is a kind of tax. It's a use tax put on students who are going to school. Everybody benefits from CUNY. Everybody in the entire city, and for that matter, the state or the metropolitan region. Then everybody benefits from CUNY. Everybody should pay.
Except that, you're looking at an increase in the transit fare. You're looking at an increase in the cost of parking tickets. The city and the state's way of trying to fund its increasing deficits is, in fact, through increases in fees because of the
Because they hate that word
because
tax.
they hate the word
Right.
tax.
They're afraid. They're
So
chickens.
that
is what they are.
becomes a political reality. I mean, you fight against that political reality, but that is the political reality. You
No,
spend
it
enough
isn't.
years
Not
in
if we
Albany.
change it, it isn't.
And
Not
for
if we
every
change
dollar
it.
that is invested in us, well, I'm gonna in quotations that is invested in us, we pay back 10 times more because we pay more taxes, we buy houses, we become prospective, excellent workers. We give back. Like for every dollar, we give back much more than the dollars that are invested in our education, because we have so many politicians, many elected officials, many presidents of companies who are CUNY students, who graduate in CUNY. You know, so it's not
Of course,
it's not
one
But
of the-
that goes back to something you raised before. If you don't have organized action,
exactly.
then you can't fight the battle that Assemblyman Sullivan is talking about.
now on,
if you
let's
just
not
sit back
organize
and
ourselves.
accept that tuition has to go up, or you accept the argument that was made here about the fact that there are other taxes going up, education is another area of concern that has a lot of other spillover that you've already pointed to. You can make the argument, but unless you organized, and by the way, just going to the legislature, you've been reading the stories in the Times in the last week about how the legislature makes its decisions, some of you. It's 3 people sitting in a room, the governor, the speaker, and the majority leader.
Not true, but continue.
I'm only quoting the Times.
I understand, but I'm only
But the fact
contradicting
of the
Times.
matter is that this election coming up, there is a difference between the candidates on these issues. The question of support for higher education, how much the state will put into higher education. There are a lot of other.
Accept that.
People are not
Right.
taxed by. If we're talking about a tax which is equitable, it should be on income.
Well, I mean,
Yes, right.
You made reference to the fact that there was a different mayor prior to this one who was much more hostile to CUNY, to some degrees hostile to the idea of public higher
Yes.
public higher
Made no
education.
bones about it.
And now we face a situation in the city of a $5 billion gap, a $6 billion gap in the state, as opposed to putting more investment into city university, state university. The reality is that there are going to be choices made about where to cut. There are going to be choices made about lesser resources. So it's all well and good for us to argue that a graduate of college makes on average $1 million more over his career, his or her career, than a high school graduate does. That translates into a lot of taxes coming back into the public coffers to do everything that we need government to do. But the reality is that we're in a time of shrinkage, and so how do you argue to hold? How would you argue to hold CUNY harmless at a time when we might even have to pay for picking up garbage? I mean, there's now talk about.
Well, you're saying that
about,
A equals B and B equals C, therefore A
No,
equals
I'm
C.
saying that
I'm
there's a
saying
limited pot of money.
A doesn't equal B if we don't want it to equal B. You know? And we have to change that. We have to change the given. We have to change the premise. And the
Can you
students will,
change the pot of money
Yes, you can change the pot of money. You can.
absent the tax increase?
Oh, absent a tax. Oh,
Right, no, I'm just talking
I
about
see.
the political reality.
Oh, yes. You know,
Well, but-
can we put courage into the hearts of politicians? I think it can be done.
We ignore that economic development is dependent upon training workforce in development of human capital. That's the most important input to economic development. It's not necessarily spending money on technology. It's spending money on people, on educating a broader and broader number of people within the society, especially people who don't have access to higher education now. So the economy will thrive if we can just put the honest facts out there about economic development, which gets sat upon all the time.
Now, let me ask you a question. You, what is the anticipation of CUNY's higher ups for a budget support? Are you anticipating less support? I mean,
Well,
what do you anticipate?
The call letter we got from the State Division of the Budget was for a flat budget for now. After the election, we'll see if there's.
But after the election, there's a likelihood that this budget is
mean,
as phony as we've ever seen a
yeah.
budget. That
I think
that the
our
cuts come
obligation
after.
as the leadership at CUNY, I believe education is the most important thing in the budget. And even in a shrinking budget, I believe CUNY is not such a huge part of the budget that, it couldn't be protected. That our obligation is to have people understand that this is a terrific university, that it is an investment. It's investment in economic development. There are some things you don't cut, because if you cut those things, you end up with fewer resources in the future, and you end up in worse budget problems. And this is one of those things. every cut is a painful cut. And all the, any politician who says we should cut waste and fraud is really a charlatan. I mean, there's no, I've been in a budget office, there's no budget category called waste and fraud. If there was, it would have been cut a long time ago, nobody would have supported it. But there are decisions you can make, and it's painful to make those decisions, but if elected officials have courage, they make the decisions. And I believe it's our obligation to have them understand how important CUNY is to the city and let them make different decisions.
There's so little money there's such a high percentage of city and state budgets that are non-discretionary. I mean, you have to, whether it's mandates or whether it's police and certain basic services that you and I'm not saying that CUNY is not a basic service, but for purposes of this discussion, there's once you take that non-discretionary money out of the pot, CUNY is now competing with other interests. I mean, are you going to cut some health care programs? Are you going to cut?
I'm not going to let you do it.
Okay.
I'm not going to do that.
Because CUNY is being treated as an agency instead of an educational institution. We are treated as a city agency, like health or whatever, instead of educational institution. That's the way that we should be treated.
CUNY is in competition not with the health department. CUNY is in competition with a tax cut for very wealthy people. CUNY is in competition with a tax cut for people who have more than they need. Now, I'm not saying I don't want to confiscate people's hard-earned money, but when people have more than they need, I believe in a just society, they should share it with people who have less than they need. That's what makes a society. And so we're not in CUNY's not in competition with the health or with emergency rooms or something else that people would like to think us we're in competition with. We're not. We're in competition with people who don't know whether they're going to go to Bermuda this year or Cadiz or some other place. I don't. That's the competition, not the emergency rooms at the Bellevue Hospital.
Well, and there are differences among the states. I mean, many states make a much bigger investment in higher education than we do. I mean, Texas, California. I mean, New York is really not in the vanguard of support for public higher education.
How much of that is because for years the state wanted to do away with CUNY, basically take CUNY under the state university umbrella. There's still, I think, resentments at the state university that this kind of big brawling beast in the city is not under their thumb.
Well, thank
It'll
Sullivan
never
there.
happen, I think, because I think that will be something that SUNY does not want. That'll be a nut they don't want to bite
I
into.
don't think so.
CUNY is,
did.
thank God, brawling and very difficult to control and full of trouble.
Yeah.
And I don't think State University wants
They
it.
did, though, for years.
No, they
I
don't.
don't
No,
think
State
so.
University
Right.
has never owned CUNY.
I know they never did, but there were moves in the...
Oh, there were moves, yeah.
There were moves, especially at the time of the fiscal crisis. What I'm thinking about is the changes that happened in the late 1970s with the imposition of tuition. And what some would argue, I would argue, is a break in a commitment. I grew up in a housing project in Brooklyn. Brooklyn College is where I could afford to go to school. Mm-hmm. And that's not the way it is for Patricia Fraticelli and people who, she grew up with in the Bronx. Who didn't grow up in very different socioeconomic conditions than I did. But I had the access to that free college.
Well, it should be free.
So,
It should be free back in the days, 1970s, and it's...
And now we're in another fiscal crisis. My argument is that you had all these profound changes in the CUNY structure and almost a takeover of CUNY by SUNY in the late 1970s, and we're back in that kind of an economic crisis
in the
right
latter
now.
part of the 19th century, not the 20th century, the 19th century, they decided that 12 years of free public education was good for society. That was about 130 years ago. 130 years have passed, and we're still at the 12 years. Shouldn't we make it at least 14 years or 16 years of free public education? That would make sense to me.
Bob, if you don't mind, just
Please.
I would say a dose of reality, but it just an interesting thing. CUNY's not a great risk from the city's budget crisis in the short run. The state legislature, in its wisdom, what happened during the 1975 is the state really didn't get a bargain. The state ended up as funding about 80% of CUNY. What was left, the city's share, around $100 million, The state has a maintenance of effort provision in a law that says that for community colleges throughout the state, they have to be funded at the same level as the year before. So the city has to fund us at the same level as they did last year. So our risk is only probably about $6 million
But of course,
at the
you're
end of the
funding
day.
at the
But
same
at the
level
state level, we have much greater risks.
when you have an extra 10,000 students and you have capital needs,
Right.
and you're talking about building a new campus on Governor's Island, so there are a lot of demands on that
Right.
same pot of
No,
money.
there's no question we'll be under a fair amount of fiscal stress. We won't get probably devastated on the city side. The state side is much riskier for us, where most of our money comes from.
Let me go to some
right there.
questions from students who are in the internship program. Identify yourself and the campus you go to.
Okay. My name is Jennifer Weiss. I'm from Hunter College. And my question is for Mr. Dorvin. You mentioned earlier that it was this great thing that all these students are coming in to CUNY and we're getting transfer students and bringing people in. And certainly that's a wonderful thing. And then the rest of the discussion has been about the budget cuts. Now, when I'm in the classroom, and I think everyone here can agree with me, we're seeing that our classrooms are doubling in size and that our funding is being cut for different classroom support things that we used to have. I'm wondering how CUNY is preparing to deal with the fact that we are doubling in size in the classroom and we're losing so much funding, or anticipating losing this funding.
And I don't know about your individual classroom. First, I'll just go back to the numbers for a second. We increased 5.4%. We didn't double. I mean, if we would have doubled, it'd be a very different situation.
She's talking about increasing in each individual.
I know,
class
but
size.
I know. But
I mean,
if we went up 5.4% as a university average
I
class,
deal
we
with
have
this issue with my
5.4.
daughter, who is in first grade, where I think classes are too big, and you deal
Right, I
with
know.
this as well at the college.
And just to go, not that I want to bore everyone with the numbers, but reality is important.
reality is not
sometimes.
what it's cracked up to be. So,
If we're up 5.4%, remember when more students come, we also get more tuition money because students are paying the tuition and we get more state aid on per capita basis. So we do have more money to hire more professors. And there has been a significant increase in terms of the capital program for building. So we're in the process now of basically rebuilding a new John Jay. We just built a new Baruch. Medgar Evers just got a $61 million grant, so we're going to do a $125 million project at Medgar Evers. So there's a lot of money being spent on it. Better scheduling would help. I mean, how many classes do you have on Friday afternoon?
None.
So we could do better scheduling. So there's a lot of ways to try to mitigate that. The big issue for us is, full-time faculty.
Exactly.
And we need to have more money for more full-time. We have
Full-time
many great
faculty.
adjuncts, but in adjuncts, time there is limited. So they can't be on committees. You can't meet with them as much as you would like to. They can't participate
you
as
also
much
don't
as
have
they
to
would
pay.
like to
You
in the
also
world
don't
of
have to pay
scholarship.
health care for them. You don't have to pay a whole bunch
Well,
of
they're
other.
cheaper. That's why
They're
historically
much-
universities
they're much
hired
cheaper.
adjuncts.
CUNY's operating
No question about
in
it.
a lower ratio of full-time faculty lines instead of, part-times. We have more part-time than full-times. And part-time faculty, they have to go through a lot too because they teach from one campus to another campus. They have to teach like 3 different campuses
The circuit
to
riders.
support themselves, and they are very good. I experience a lot of part-timers, and they make their time to give you, but still it's not enough. We need to have more access to our professors, and that way it will be enhanced, our knowledge, our...
Bob, just one more important follow-up. At Hunter College, because Hunter College is very crowded, your president made a very wise decision. She froze the incoming freshmen. So the number of students, that's where it's up 20 or 30% in other places. At Hunter, it didn't increase because it was a conscious effort not to have it be any more crowded than it is, which I think was very wise.
You want to jump in? Sir.
Yeah, hello, my name is Jeffrey Laufer, and I'm a student at Bronx Community College. And I think it's not a question to students about how much they're paying for school. I mean, yes, sometimes when we're spending our hard-earned money and it keeps increasing and increasing, we get a little frustrated. But I think it's more of the respect that in comparison with CUNY and other private and public colleges. In other words, we're spending $1,600 a semester while other students are spending more. But if we're going to spend $5,000 a semester, we should get the privileges that other public and private schools do. I know me and a lot of other students have a few complaints in the fact that, it's hard to get certain classes we need for graduation. Teachers are never available when we need to speak with them. It's very hard to contact them on a one-on-one
Do you think
basis and
that's a
stuff like
result
that.
of budget problems or a result of a lack of commitment on the part of the faculty? I mean, why do you think that is?
Well, I think it honestly has to do with the budget. I mean, the teachers in CUNY's schools do not get paid nearly as much as they do in other private institutions. you know, as we say, you don't get as much bang for your buck. So if we were spending $10,000 a semester, you know, I honestly wouldn't care, as long as if we're spending more money, we're going to see that money actually come back to us. So if I want to go see a professor when I have a break for 10 minutes, I'd be able to go do that.
Go ahead.
You're right. It is the budget. You said, you asked us at the budget, and it is the budget, because time and again the legislature has put into the budget extra money to be spent only on full-time faculty to get the ratio up. You should have some adjunct. I taught as an adjunct at CUNY. And you should have some adjuncts, because they bring in some fresh ideas and things. But you've got to have the basic, the fundamental faculty has got to be full-time. And time and again, we have put full-time faculty lines into the budget, and time and again it's taken out of the budget by the executive. Not only this current governor, but the previous governor, very frankly, took those lines out. You want to have full-time faculty because they're a part of the campus, and they want to work with the students. That's their work.
We all agree.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Helen Diaz, and I'm from City College. And my question is to whoever wants to answer it. How will the City University of New York help people that don't have enough money to attend college, for example, immigrants?
Just recently, we passed in the legislature, and the governor signed it, a law which would undo, to a certain extent, a very unwise federal law which negatively affected immigrants. This is a city made up of immigrants. This is a city made up of immigrants. And part of our work, part of the city's work, is to transform people who came to New York looking for some new life, to transform them so that they will be able to create a new life here in New York. And so that is one of CUNY, since CUNY is an emanation of the city, that is one of CUNY's major works, is to work with immigrant people who come to New York. Not only immigrants from other countries, but immigrants from other parts of the United States. Raise your hand. I'm one of them, right? I came as a young person to New York. You know, my hometown wasn't big enough for me. I wanted to go to the big town, right, and to do things there. And there are lots of people like that. So that is one of CUNY's major jobs.
You know, one of the points about that immigrant makeup now is that the immigrant makeup is different. When socioeconomically, the immigrants who are coming today are not very different than my grandparents were when they came from Eastern Europe in 1910 and 1915. But they're different racially. They're different in terms of the nationality. There's been an argument that was made that as you had open enrollment and increasing minority enrollment in CUNY, that the political support from the white power structure, I'm using very broad terms here, undercut some of CUNY's political clout. You made reference to that in your opening comments, suggesting that there's a tracking, almost an ethnic tracking, among the elite senior colleges. I mean, so how much of the political capital, is affected by the ethnic makeup of the student bodies and the different immigrants who are here than there were when I went to CUNY?
Well, it's obvious that, of course, people who are excluded from the system or discriminated against don't have power, so they're not going to exercise power.
But CUNY was one of the entry levels to kind of get into, to kind of climb that ladder.
It was, and it has been historically, but there were periods in which it was closed off, and it was closed off after the 1970s with the charging of tuition, which eliminated many people who would have otherwise probably come. It was opened up with open admissions and then closed again, and it was closed when this attack was made by various political leaders like Mayor Giuliani. By the way, in my experience, there has never been a mayor who really fully supported CUNY. We have had very little support, not only from the mayor, but from our own board. We are probably the only college in the country that has a board that acted against the college and the university itself. Rather than raising money or being supportive, we've always had people appointed by the mayor and the governor after, and those people have attacked the university. It's the strangest kind of thing from the point of view of a political scientist to have such a board which has a negative role in the system. So that does. Who was on our board when all this happened?
Can I say something? Also, even though I agree for the new law that you pass the, you know. However, it's only embraced the students who graduated here, right? Like in a high school.
Yes.
But what about an immigrant who want to go to CUNY with a student visa? It's very expensive. And I know many students who have 3 different jobs to support themselves because they have to pay full tuition and above average. It's too, like, for example, for example, Jamaican students or Antigua students, they have to pay a lot of money.
I think that if you're an immigrant, a non-resident immigrant, whether you're legal or illegal, I think it's over $5,000.
It's too much. If there's a way that they can lower down the tuition for the visa student, or if there's more scholarships available, and it's not that listen. I'm a very proud student of CUNY. I thank God that CUNY opened its door for me. I thank God because I'm gaining knowledge. My mind is very open. I'm not judgmental as I was. I thank God for the education that I'm receiving now. I'm always going to be representing CUNY. Maybe I'm going to be in the political arena tomorrow, and I'm going to advocate. No, you know that I want to be position. You know that.
It's one of the reasons that you retired.
The chairman of the chairwoman of the Higher Education Committee. However, I know
it's a good thing you left.
That's why you left.
That many things happen. Many things, and those students with a visa, it's very hard for them. Like I said, if there is a way that they can lower down their tuition, because sometimes they don't even have the money to go, and they make all the sacrifices.
Anybody want to go back so quickly?
Let me just take something. Go to City College. Go to Shepherd Hall. Look at the mural in the back of the stage at Shepherd Hall. And there in the center is truth or light or something in the form of a woman standing there. All right. And then there are the students hailing truth or light or whatever she is. They're all male, and they're all white. Now, that was portrayed many years ago. After the 60s, that would be laughable. No one would even think of doing it like that because things changed. So when you say the givens or you can't change things, you can change things. Don't let anybody tell you the 60s didn't change things. We changed the world in the 60s. We changed the world for women. We changed the world for African Americans in America. We changed the world for immigrants. We changed the world. And today, thank God, CUNY is a much different place than what that portrait shows. And I say we're all better off for it, but I mean, that you can change things. It takes a little bit of trouble. It takes a little bit of rumbling, but you can change things.
Let me go to another question, please.
Hi, my name is Danielle Lewis. I'm from Hunter College, and my question is actually about the opinions of CUNY. About the opinions of CUNY. There was recently a New York State Appellate Court ruling that the state is only responsible for 8 years of education for each of its children. Those opinions also affect the funding of CUNY. How do you feel that it affects, and how would that, like, our budget cuts for the next fiscal year?
That was actually an appellate ruling in the Campaign for Fiscal Equity lawsuit, which argued that the city's public schools, elementary to high schools, were not getting its fair share. And Judge DeGrassi here ruled in favor of that suit, and the state argued against it. And now the governor says, well, he argued against it, but he doesn't really believe what his argument was. So,
elections are
is that argument that only an 8th grade education is mandated by the state constitution? Does that affect kind of the political culture and undercut the ability of people to gain support for CUNY, or is that just so out of the mainstream that we don't pay much attention?
I hope that everyone will recognize that as one of the most absurd findings of any court in the history of this state. I
don't think it'll affect CUNY directly.
I don't think it'll affect. I think it'll be overturned first of all in Court of Appeals very quickly.
I mean,
I don't think the decision will be overturned. Maybe there'll be a critique of the finding. But
I mean, it only affects CUNY indirectly in that CUNY has our close partners are the new Department of Education. And the quality of high school graduates affects CUNY. And the more money we spend and the more equitable we are in terms of the money we spend in high schools, the better off CUNY is.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Jordan Mazzella. I'm a sophomore at Brooklyn College, and my question is in particular towards Mr. Sullivan. Last year they tried to, raise the tuition for immigrants, and they tried to cut TAP. And, this year they're proposing a tuition hike. I'm trying to understand how politicians look at students in terms of voters, in terms of, what kind of power CUNY students have.
Well, they look at you, politicians, and I'm one, politicians will look at you the way you make them look at you. If they see you as voters who are concerned about an issue, they will respond. If they don't see you as voters, frankly, they're not going to respond, because they got plenty of voters that they have to respond to. There's only 24 hours in a day. So they're going to focus on those students, those people that are voters. And then after that, that's what they do. So I'd say make yourself known to the politicians.
That's why I stress the issue on how relevant, imperative is to organize in your campus, in your community, is to go out there and lobby in Albany. We have higher education lobby session in the spring semester, right? Mm-hmm. Go out there, 500 students, go to the legislators, let them know what you need, make your voice to be heard, through organizing in your campus, be part of your student government. I know when I was the president of student government in Bronx Community College, right? And I didn't believe in all that, in the beginning, but I know that our voice can be heard. That's why I'm not tired of repeating how important and relevant, imperative is to organize. And if you're registered to vote, go out there, make sure that you know that you are one of the CUNY students. And if you see your legislator say, I'm your constituent, I vote for you, I can help you, help CUNY, just lobby in their faces. Don't get tired, make phone calls, write letters. It's very important to organize. And also, I want to say something before this end. We have friends at CUNY. Don't think that the administration and the 80th Street is your enemy. We have friends at CUNY. There should be more ongoing communication among you, like bridging gaps between administrators, staff, student. You need to let them know, what do you need, what is your issue, and you might get an answer. I have friends, I cannot say no.
How active is the Senate, the student Senate?
The University Student Senate?
Yes, yeah.
Well, I think
isn't that an important point?
Every day of our life, I'm the interim chair now. Okay,
that's why I asked you the question.
No, but I think that every day of our life, we need to rebuild. It's very important. And USS is in that process of rebuilding. And hopefully with the student-wide participation, because me as the interim chair, what I can do without the support from the student body, from the student senators, the student representatives. But if they don't go to the meetings, they don't show up.
Yeah, I think that elected officials believe that young people don't vote. Yes. And if you look at voting behavior across the United States, generally, the older you get, the more likely you are to vote. So it's very important, given they're going to believe that almost no matter what you do, that you be very active, that you know who your elected officials are, that you keep saying to them over and over again how important CUNY is, not just, I don't want to pay tuition, but it's an investment.
Exactly.
The investment you make in me is very, very important. People who go to CUNY stay in New York City. That's not true with all the private colleges. They stay, they make more money, they pay more taxes. It's foolish not to make the investments. And you need to be in their faces telling them that.
Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Dee Long, and I attend Hunter College. Professor Gattel, you brought up the term four-year senior elite college within CUNY. What makes these schools special, and can they serve as a model for other CUNY colleges?
Well, they have a tradition. They have higher.
What are they?
Probably Queens, Brooklyn, Hunter, now Baruch. Baruch is in great demand. And someone mentioned, I think you did, Ed, that John Jay, with its specialized police orientation, is city.
City would be.
And what makes it elite is that their admission requirements are higher, and so therefore they take, we call creaming, they take the better students from that point of view. They may not, by scores, you may not think they're better, but that's what they use as the admission requirements. And in many ways, they, in the past, I don't know about the current administration, have gotten a good deal more of the resources of the university.
Yes, they do have
and maybe even better facilities.
Yeah.
And they were the colleges, I mean, this new enormous library at Brooklyn, not that they don't deserve it, but, so that's what I mean by elite. And therefore, if you look at the student population, the diversity is less in those institutions than it would be, let's say, at Bronx Community, Medgar Evers, which are not in that group. And could they serve as a model? Well, I think in many ways, a lot of the individual colleges serve as models in different ways. For instance, LaGuardia College, no matter where you go in the United States, everybody knows about LaGuardia College. It's probably the leading community college in the country by reputation. It has the most important cooperative ed program of any college. And talking about immigrant population, the Samuel Center did a study of LaGuardia College, and immigrant students there give credit to that experience for how they were able to adjust in New York and American society. So it has a very important role from the point of view of citizenship and becoming a part of the system itself.
And the Hall of Fame in Bronx Community College.
Bob, let me just do one thing. I think if you take a look, though, most of the senior colleges, the ethnicity looks like, if you look at a city college, if you look at Baruch, the ethnicity looks like the ethnicity.
Next time we're on, you'll bring the numbers.
I'd be glad to.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Clarice Flores, and I'm a senior in Brooklyn College. My problem is it sounds nice to tell students to organize and go to Albany and protest. But the problem is many students have jobs, have families. There's simply no time to go to Albany and constantly protest the tuition hikes, the added fees. What should these students do?
I got the answer. Go ahead.
Me
You-
too.
you-
No, listen, I'm sorry. You know, I understand that we are non-traditional students, you know, that I'm a mother of 3 kids, okay? I'm a full-time worker. But if I want to make things happen, I got a phone, you know. I can call, listen, are you going to be there with a table, whatever, and enroll some people? You don't have to be there physically that day. But you can make your own. It's so many ways that you can be organized. It's so many ways that you can be involved, you know. But that might apply to me, and that's the thing. That it's time to wake up, smell the coffee, and if we're gonna complain, then we must do something about it. Not only complain about the tuition hike or whatever, but you know, complain and then try to work. And I understand, believe me, because I'm one of those students who also got a personal life. A struggle every day, obstacle and challenge it every single day of my life, from 6 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night. But hey, you know, I want things happen. I'm gonna make sure that things happen.
Good. Briefly.
One thing you can do is to go to the district office of the legislator. Every legislator has a district office. You go there. Go there with 100 students. You may not think you can get 100 students into that little office. But if you try, you can get 100 students in there and put pressure on that politician to do what you want him to do. He works for you. I work for you. I don't work for somebody else. I work for you. And that politician, whoever he is, works for you. You go in there and let him know as his boss or her boss. Let him know or her know what you want.
I mean, one of the arguments, of course, is that if you want something done, go to a busy person.
Yes.
Because busy people find ways to stretch the time to do it. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Lamia Louisa, and I attend Queens College. My question is reflected on Mr. Sullivan's comment earlier when you said that in the 1960s we made changes. I'm happy that we made change, like you guys made changes in the 1960s, but we're in 2003. And a lot of the students, I mean, the fact that the mural is still there, that means that nothing's really changed that much. So I want to know, with Patricia's comment, is that I was a president at BSU and Queens College, and that yes, NIPERG is a great organization and all, but how do other students who are not really active, you know, do things that could move and change things?
How do you make them see their own interests?
Exactly,
is what
because
you're
there's
asking.
other
Well,
students
that's
who don't want to join NIPERG and go, like the other comment that the young lady said earlier, go to these, they're not active, they don't consider themselves political, but they do have the same issues that you do. So how exactly, and what places can you go to do that?
Let me just let's use this as kind of, because there's only a couple of minutes left. I mean, it's a good point to kind of what can students do to affect their futures?
You're not going to have everybody supporting you. You're only going to have a small group. You'll form a group of 30. Everybody will be enthusiastic. You say, okay, we're going to meet next Tuesday night, right? Same time, same place, right here. 15 come. Uh-oh, we're going backwards. No, you aren't. You're going forward, because now you know the 15 that are going to do the work. Now you got the 15 that are really serious, and now you can move forward. You don't need oceans of people.
Exactly.
You need a small group of people who are willing to put in the time, and you can find them at Queens College.
Do you want to go ahead?
And I'm not saying only NIPER. There's many organizations out there. And among yourselves, you can organize without being, involved in student government or whatever. But if you are, I think that if you have a common goal, you are organizing already, and then you can make things, you can make changes. If you have a common goal, like he said, with 15 people, you can go to the legislators' officers, and you can go and lobby, and you can, but the more people, more power, though. You understand? So a big coalition is for me, more people, more power, but however,
I think you also have to, everybody's different, and everybody has different interests, and some people work 3 jobs, and some people don't, and some people are interested in political issues, and some people are not. But you try to get everyone involved at the level that they're at. So somebody may be involved and willing to get on a bus and go to Albany with you. That may be a small number of people. But somebody else might be, working on the homework in the student union. You can get to them with a petition and just say, not a big deal, just sign our petition. And maybe that's all you can get out of them, but you can get something out of everybody.
I just want to add that this is not just a problem for students, it's a problem in our whole society. There are a lot of things happening in the U.S. right now that everybody is being critical of, but they're not organizing to take any action, and they're asking the same questions you are, some of them. And I'm sure you're asking them. Maybe the priority is not your tuition. Maybe the priority is the Iraqi war. Maybe the priority is the inequities in American society, it's the division between rich and poor. Maybe race is or gender is a more important issue, and I respect that. I think my observation is too many of us are looking inside instead of outside, to what the broader issues are. Your position is related to other broader economic issues in the society. If some of those issues were resolved, I think Ed said before, if we could change the attitude